US troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, there are two major theories that are surfacing. One, that now China will sweep in to fill the vacuum. And secondly, that US now has time to focus on China and its growing aggression. Both, in a way, are true. Beijing indeed is increasing influence in Afghanistan, and the United States of America now is storming ahead with new military and security alliances like the Quad and now AUKUS. Here's a report.
A common approach between India and Australia in
Indo-Pacific and counter China. The real strategic game is being played to contain China, be it with the Quad Security Alliance or, for that matter, the new Defence Pact among US, Australia and UK, which will enable Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines for the first time, using technology provided by the United States.
As our first major initiative, it is, as we have announced today, for Australia to achieve a nuclear-powered submarine fleet. Not a nuclear-armed, a nuclear-powered.
The pact, to be known as AUKUS, will also cover artificial intelligence, cyber and quantum technologies, the biggest defence partnership among the countries in decades.
This is about investing in our greatest source of strength, our alliances, and updating them to better meet the threats of today and tomorrow. It's about connecting America's existing allies and partners in new ways and amplifying our ability to collaborate, recognizing there is no regional divide separating the interests of our Atlantic and Pacific partners.
Australia has emerged as a real challenger to the Chinese aggression in the region, now backed by a Quad alliance and the AUKUS Defence Pact. But China has already sent warning signals, accusing the West of Cold War mentality and ideological prejudices.
The US, the UK and Australia's cooperation in nuclear submarines severely damages regional peace and stability, intensifies the arms race and jeopardizes the international efforts in promoting the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. The US and UK's action of exporting highly sensitive nuclear submarine technology once again proves that they are using nuclear exports as a tool for geopolitical games and adapts double standards. This is highly irresponsible act.
What is AUKUS? Biggest security arrangement between the three nations since World War II. Defence Pact among the US, UK and Australia. The pact will focus on military capability, separate from the Five Eyes intelligence sharing alliance, which includes New Zealand and Canada. Australia's submarines is the big ticket item. It involves sharing of cyber capabilities, artificial intelligence, quantum and other undersea technologies. The announcement comes days ahead of the first Quad in-person leadership meet. President Biden will host Prime Ministers of Australia, Japan and India on 24th September at the White House to discuss regional and global issues. While the thrust will be on the Indo-Pacific, much of the conversation will focus on Afghanistan and the security threat it poses to the Indian subcontinent.
Afghanistan must not allow its soil to be used in any manner by anybody for terrorism.
We do share very strong interests in ensuring that Afghanistan never again becomes a safe haven for the breeding or the training of terrorists. And that is an abiding concern of the international community.
There has been a lot of diplomatic engagement among these common allies. The first India-Australia 2+2 meeting not only spelt out the focus on Afghanistan, but also the need to pursue a free and open Indo-Pacific that promotes interests of all partner countries. But a riled-up China has warned on diplomatic ramifications.
We believe that all regional cooperation mechanisms should conform to the trend of the times, featuring peace and development, help enhance mutual trust and cooperation among regional countries, and should not target or harm the interest of third parties. Forming exclusive cliques that are directed at other countries is against the trend of the times. and runs counter to the aspirations of regional countries. It is absolutely unpopular and has no way out.
While India claimed there was no scope for expansion of the Quad and has been towing a cautious line, Australia and United States have included United Kingdoms in a defence pact that seems more attuned to military solutions than security and economic initiatives around the Indo-Pacific.
September 15th will mark 1 month of the fall of Kabul. 1 month of Taliban regime, and we can already see the seams of the flag of the new administration fraying. There has been major tension within the top leadership of the Taliban, this even as they roll out new rules, policies and laws for the country. This coming week, the world is going to sit together at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly to decide on Afghanistan. The global community is still undecided on according legitimacy to Taliban by recognizing the government.
The colour from the beautiful streets of Kabul have faded. The tricolour no longer flutters atop the presidential palace building. Signs of change visible. A change not so welcome by many still living in the country. But one that is celebrated by others who were waiting to see the return of the Taliban.
Taking the freedom is the right of all nations. The Afghan people, by using their legal right after 20 years of jihad, were able to take their freedom and clean their country from the occupation and occupiers.
A month after seizing Kabul, the Taliban face daunting problems as they seek to convert their lightning military victory into a durable peacetime government. The infighting now being reported amid denials by Taliban spokespersons.
नहीं कोई डिफरेंस नहीं है, कोई लड़ाई नहीं है. हमारी एक आइडियोलॉजी है, एक पॉलिसी है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. लेकिन जो वो रिपोर्ट्स है आपकी तरफ से या दूसरी तरफ से, वो तो 20 साल से ऐसे पॉलिटिकली मोटिवेटेड रिपोर्ट्स कर रही है, लेकिन वो हकीकत को रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं करते.
Even as the new government announces new policies, women who have seen too much freedom are not willing to simply accept the diktats lying down. Women and men are separated in the classrooms.
The Islamic Emirate Authority announced that it will introduce a cabinet that under no circumstances will women be a part of it. When they said this, then of course, those of us who have studied, who have had an education, who have played a role in society, we fought back. We want women and men to always maintain their rights. It's not gender specific for us. For us, what matters is for everyone to have the right authority and rights.
Past month has seen vicious attacks on women, media, journalists, but the Taliban are unapologetic.
A woman can't be a minister. It is like you put something on her neck that she can't carry. It is not necessary for a woman to be in the cabinet. They should give birth, and women protesters can't represent all women in Afghanistan.
Many have fled the nation, many stranded at the borders. While the country is on the brink of a civil war, there are many more challenges to overcome. The biggest being the economic crisis that looms large.
There are 14 million Afghans who are what we classify as being in food crisis or emergency situations, IPC 3 and above. And I would stress that there's 4 million of those who are what we as in FAO classify as in emergency status. Just to be clear what we mean when we say emergency status, IPC phase 4. This represents extreme gaps in food consumption, very high levels of acute malnutrition and excess mortality.
Financial aid is dependent on whether if the Taliban will keep its promise of being inclusive. Not a single woman in the new Afghan cabinet is a sign of times to come.
We just want the same rights as men or the same concessions that we had under the government of Ashraf Ghani. We want to have rights under the Taliban government also. If not at 100%, if not at 80%, then at least 50% should be given to us.
After 4 decades of war and death of tens of thousands of people, security has largely improved. But Afghanistan's economy is in ruins, despite hundreds of billions of dollars in development spending over the past 20 years. While the world is still waiting to see if Afghanistan can see peace and calm, there are major concerns regarding terror taking root in the war-torn nation once again. The United Nations General Assembly and member states will discuss the situation in Kabul in the coming week. But it will be a while before any country accords the Taliban legitimacy by recognizing its government.
I'm being joined by Nobel laureate Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, somebody who has been fighting for child rights, now has been declared the UN's Sustainable Development Goals advocate for this year. It is the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. Satyarthi, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. Let me begin by asking you, what would your focus be as the advocate for this year?
Well, I have been given this role in the most critical and challenging juncture for children in the world. And therefore, my prime motive would be to bring back the issues related to the most marginalized children in the global development discourses, policies, and state countries' agendas. And that is very much needed now. Otherwise, tens of millions of children would be pushed into chronic poverty, slavery, trafficking, bonded labor, child labor, and many of them will never come back to school. So that is the biggest challenge now, and that requires a lot of political will as well as social efforts. And beside that, more important thing is the finances should be made available to ensure that goal 8.7, which is related to children, particularly, and forced labor, that has to be fulfilled. And as we know that this is the only goal which has to be accomplished by 2025. And what trends we see are very, very alarming, and it's a kind of warning.
Mr. Satyarthi, the fact that you're focusing on children, I'll begin by asking you about how to deal with the biggest crisis today. We know that when it comes to children, they're the most vulnerable of the lot, especially in poor countries, in developing nations, in underdeveloped or least developed nations, so to say, but they are the most vulnerable in conflict zones. I'm talking about Afghanistan. How do you envisage children in Afghanistan in a new Taliban regime where we are seeing quite a few children out of school? According to reports, 4.4 million, out of which 2.2 million are girls alone.
This is definitely a serious problem to the international community. Everyone must understand that these Afghani children are our children. If we consider them just Afghani children, then we are not going to solve the problem. These are the children of this world. These are the children of human family. And we have to prioritize their issues. We all know that peace and sustainability can be achieved through non-violence methods. And children should not face these violence. I would say that we have to make every effort as the international community, those who are ruling the country as well as those who are outside the governance, as well as the governments of the world and the United Nations agencies must prioritize the issues of children, particularly the education of girls and boys. Every single child should be back to school, and the school should be the safest place for children. They should be protected. They should be given all support of health and freedom to go to school and enjoy fullest of their childhood. And that requires lot of efforts And I appeal everyone to support those children.
Well, I hope people are listening. The year you won Nobel was the year the focus was on children. You shared your Nobel Prize with Malala, and the fact that she was a victim of a Taliban attack, although in Pakistan. Now we see Taliban back in Afghanistan. Is there a concern with regards to how the international community should wait and ensure inclusivity in the country, ensure freedom for women, ensure freedom for children, girls especially in the country, for them to be able to move as freely as they did in the past 20 years?
Well, governments and other agencies and independent, well-meaning people should try to push this agenda with any ruling regime in Afghanistan. If Taliban is there, Taliban should be engaged to give opportunities for children, education for children. So that dialogue and that kind of sustainable efforts have to be made. So we don't know who will come in the power in the future. But one thing should be made clear, that we have to engage any government for the betterment of children.
Well, to sum it up, every minute of every child matters, and it is not what they need, but what they deserve. Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. Indeed a pleasure.